Your family did not stay poor because they were stupid. They stayed poor because they were taught something far more dangerous than ignorance. They were taught that looking rich was more important than being rich, that the opinion of strangers mattered more than the size of the asset column, that the car outside the house was more urgent than the deed inside the safe. And the cruelest part is that they taught you the same thing, not because they wanted to trap you, but because nobody ever told them there was another way. That changes right now. Today, we are going to tear apart the hidden transmission system that keeps families poor across generations, the programming that turns paychecks into props, raises into leases, and inheritances into a single weekend of looking successful before the money disappears forever. If you have ever wondered why people who earn good money still end up with nothing, why the families with the newest cars have the oldest debts, why your parents worked harder than anyone you know, but never built anything that outlasted them, this is the answer. And by the end, I am going to show you exactly how to stop being the next link in that chain. This is going to be a long one because the lie is buried deep, and it takes time to dig it out. Get comfortable. Before we go any further, let me define what I mean when I say looking rich versus being rich. Looking rich is what poor and middle-class families teach their children to want. The car that turns heads, the watch people notice, the house in the zip code where the neighbors post about it, the vacation photos that prove you are winning, the wedding that cost more than a down payment because anything less would have embarrassed the family. Being rich is what old money families teach their children to build, the asset column that generates income while you sleep, the quiet ownership of things that appreciate, the financial architecture that survives your death, the freedom to walk into any room and know you do not need a single person in it to be impressed by you. One of these requires spending, the other requires discipline. One makes you a customer, the other makes you an owner. One impresses strangers for an hour, the other protects your bloodline for a century. Your family, almost certainly, taught you the first one, not because they were bad people, but because they lived in a system that punishes the appearance of poverty more harshly than the reality of it. The landlord does not care if your car payment kept you from the rent. The school does not care if the new phone came before the college fund. The relative at the family gathering does not care about your savings rate. They see the shoes, they see the bag, they see the car. And so your parents and their parents before them learned to feed the visible at the expense of the real. They became experts at looking like they had money while systematically ensuring they would never actually have it. This is the operating system. You inherit it, and if you do not deliberately uninstall it, it will do to you exactly what it did to them. Section 1. The shame engine. Here is how the transmission actually works. You grow up in a household where money is tight. Not desperately poor most of the time, just tight enough that every unexpected bill feels like a small disaster. The car breaks down, and the mood in the house shifts for a month. The school asks for a field trip fee, and your mother's face tightens in a way you learn to read before you learn algebra. You absorb something from this without anyone ever saying it out loud. Being poor is humiliating. Not having money means being embarrassed. It means the other kids notice. It means the teachers notice. It means your own family notices. And so the goal, the unspoken but absolute goal that gets wired into you before you turn 10 years old, is not to become wealthy. It is to stop looking poor. That distinction is everything. A family that wants to stop being poor builds assets. A family that wants to stop looking poor buys props, and props are expensive. The new sneakers so your kid does not get laughed at. The birthday party that costs a week's pay because the other parents set a standard. The family car that is less than 5 years old because anything older would look like you are struggling, even though you are struggling. Even though everyone in the neighborhood is struggling. Even though the struggle is the one thing everyone has in common. The irony is brutal. Everyone is pretending to be fine, and everyone knows everyone else is pretending. But nobody can afford to be the first one to stop, because the first one to stop looking rich is the one the relatives whisper about. Did you hear about them? I think they are having problems, and the family's reputation, fragile and expensive, must be protected at all costs. So you grow up learning that the appearance of financial health is more important than financial health itself. You learn that spending is proof of love, that the size of the gift is the size of the feeling, that a small Christmas means a failing family, that a cheap wedding means a marriage that will not last. Every lesson you absorb about money is actually a lesson about shame management, and that is how you become an adult who makes $80,000 a year and has $400 in savings, because the engine is still running. The engine is shame, and it never runs out of fuel as long as there is someone watching. Section 2, the consumer culture trap. Now here is where the system becomes truly sinister, because the shame engine I just described does not happen in a vacuum. It happens inside an economic machine that has spent trillions of dollars perfecting the art of converting shame into purchases. The advertising industry, the credit industry, the entire consumer economy is not selling you products. It is selling you relief from the feeling of being less than. Every advertisement you have ever seen follows the same hidden script. Here is someone who is better than you. They are happier, more attractive, more respected, more loved. The only difference between you and them is this product. Buy it and close the gap. And poor and middle-class families are uniquely vulnerable to this script because they have been conditioned since childhood to believe that their dignity is tied to their visible consumption. The message lands differently on someone who grew up being mocked for their shoes than it does on someone who grew up with a trust fund. The trust fund kid does not need the shoes to feel worthy. The person who was humiliated in the school cafeteria at age 12 will pay almost any price to never feel that feeling again. This is why luxury brands target the aspiring class, not the actual wealthy. The wealthy do not need logos. They already know who they are. The aspiring need the logo to borrow the identity. The logo says, "I belong here." The credit card company understands this better than you do. They know that the purchase is not about the item. It is about who you become in the moment you swipe the card. For 30 seconds, you are the person who can afford this. For 30 seconds, the gap is closed, and then the payment comes due, and the gap is wider than before. Because now you have the thing and the debt. The thing depreciates. The debt compounds. The identity you bought was rented, not owned. And the rental fee is eating your future. Old money families understand this distinction at a level so deep they do not even have to think about it. They were raised in households where wealth was measured by what you owned, not what you wore, where the most powerful financial move was often to look less wealthy than you actually were, where the approval of strangers was not just irrelevant, it was suspicious. Someone who needs you to know they have money is someone whose money is new and probably temporary. Old money has spent generations perfecting the art of invisibility. Poor and middle-class families have spent generations perfecting the art of visibility. One builds capital. The other builds credit card debt. One compounds upward. The other compounds into a cage. Section 3. The first real money trap. Here is the moment where the inherited programming does the most damage, and almost nobody sees it coming. You get your first real paycheck. Not a part-time job paycheck, not a student stipend. Real money. Maybe it is your first professional salary. Maybe it is your first business that actually makes profit. Maybe it is a bonus or a commission check that is bigger than anything you have ever held in your hands before. And something switches on in your brain. Something that was planted there decades before you earned a single dollar. The voice that says, "You made it. Now you can finally stop looking poor. Now you can finally prove to everyone that you are not the failure the shame engine always whispered you might be." And so what happens next is almost scripted. The new car. Not because the old car was broken, but because the old car was a symbol of the person you were before, and you want to kill that person. The new apartment. The new wardrobe. The dinner where you pick up the check for everyone, because for the first time in your life, you can be the generous one, the successful one, the one who is not being quietly judged. The family expectations ramp up immediately. Suddenly, you are expected to contribute more to every gathering, every holiday, every emergency. Your success becomes the family's success. Your income becomes the family's safety net. And because you were raised to believe that money equals love equals proof, you say yes. You say yes to the loan to the cousin. You say yes to the vacation you cannot really afford because your parents never had one, and you want to give them that experience. You say yes to the wedding that is twice what you budgeted because this is the day and you only get one, and what will people say? And here is the math that nobody showed you. Every dollar you spend proving you have made, it is a dollar that is not compounding. Every dollar that goes to the car payment is a dollar that is not buying an asset. Every raise you get disappears into lifestyle before it ever touches an investment account. You are earning more than your parents ever earned, and you are somehow just as broke at the end of the month. The number going in is bigger. The number going out is bigger, by exactly the same amount plus a little more. And the mechanism that makes this happen is the one you inherited. The belief that income is permission, that earning more means you deserve more, that you have paid your dues in the shame economy, and now it is your turn to collect the visible rewards. Old money families do not raise their children to think this way. When an old money child receives their first significant sum, whether from a trust distribution or a business venture, they have been trained since childhood to ask a completely different question. Not what can I buy with this, not what will prove I have arrived, but where does this fit in the asset architecture? How does this money make more money? What does it own? The first real money moment is a fork in the road that determines the next 30 years. One path leads to a bigger lifestyle and the same financial fragility your parents had. The other path leads to a growing asset base that eventually replaces your need for a paycheck entirely. Most people take the first path without even realizing the second one existed. Their family never showed them the fork because their family never saw it either. Section 4. The education of old money. Old money families do not educate their children to be good employees. This is so obvious once you see it, but so invisible to people raised outside that world. The middle-class family asks their child, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" The old money family asks a different question. What do you want to own? The first question assumes employment. The second assumes ownership. The first question prepares you to trade time for money. The second prepares you to own things that generate money regardless of your time. Think about what happens at the dinner table in each household. In the middle-class household, the conversation about work is about the boss. In the old money household, the conversation is about the asset, how the property is performing, what the market is doing, why the family decided to restructure the holding, what the trust provisions mean for the next generation. The children absorb an entirely different understanding of how the world works. One child learns to navigate an organization. The other child learns to own the organization. This is not about intelligence. It is about exposure. The middle-class child is just as smart. They simply never hear the conversations that would teach them how money actually functions at the ownership level. And then there is the question of what constitutes valuable knowledge. The middle class prizes credentials. The old money prizes what I will call structural knowledge, how legal entities work, how contracts are constructed, how to read a balance sheet and see the power dynamics behind the numbers, how to negotiate from a position of leverage, how to sit across a table from someone who wants your assets and not flinch. These are not things you learn in a classroom. They are things you learn by being in the room when decisions are made. Old money parents deliberately create these rooms. They bring their children to meetings. They explain why a deal is structured a certain way. They walk the 12-year-old through the family trust document, not as an academic exercise, but as a conversation about responsibility and strategy. The middle-class parent is terrified of their child failing because failure means financial catastrophe. One bad business decision could mean losing the house. The old money parent can afford to let their child fail, lose the capital on a bad venture. Good. What did you learn? The lesson is more valuable than the money because the money is replaceable, and the lesson will protect 10 times that amount over a lifetime. This is why you see so many wealthy family members starting businesses that fail in their 20s and being supported through it. Not because the family is reckless, because they are running an education program where controlled failure is the curriculum. The practical shift here is not about getting invited to the right dinner tables. It is about what you choose to study. Stop reading only about how to earn more. Start reading about how to own more. Understanding how a limited liability company works is worth more to your long-term wealth than another certification in your field. Understanding how a trust functions is worth more than a salary negotiation script. The information that builds dynasties is freely available. It just is not on the syllabus they gave you in school. Section 5. The fake status tax. Let me show you the line item that is bankrupting your bloodline. It is not the rent. It is not the groceries. It is not even the emergency expenses that blow up the budget. It is the invisible tax you pay every single month to strangers whose opinion of you should not matter and does not last. The car payment. $600 a month for a vehicle that impresses people at traffic lights who will forget you exist before the light turns green. The car depreciates the second you drive it off the lot, and keeps depreciating every month, while the payment keeps coming. In 5 years, the car is worth half what you paid, and you have spent $36,000 for the privilege of looking successful. To people who are not paying attention anyway, the wardrobe, the clothes that signal you belong in the room. The problem is that the room changes, and so do the signals. What was expensive last season is embarrassing this season. The treadmill never stops, and the only people getting rich are the people selling the treadmill. The phone, the annual upgrade cycle that costs $1,000 a year for marginally better cameras and processors that you will never push to even 10% of their capacity. The restaurant habit, the $100 dinners that are not about the food. They are about the experience of being served. They are about posting the photo. They are about feeling like the kind of person who does not look at prices. The subscriptions, the streaming services, the delivery apps, the convenience fees that bleed $20 here and $30 there until they add up to a car payment's worth of monthly drain on capital that never had a chance to compound. The gifts, the obligation spending on birthdays and holidays and weddings and baby showers, where the price of the gift is treated as the measure of the relationship, and falling short means social penalty. Poor families pay this tax at a higher rate than anyone else, not because they consume more, because they pay with money they cannot afford to lose. When an old money family spends $1,000 on a dinner, that $1,000 is a rounding error in their asset base. When a middle-class family spends the same $1,000, it is capital that could have compounded for 40 years. 40 years at 8% turns that $1,000 into almost $22,000. The dinner cost $22,000 future dollars, and nobody at the restaurant told you that when they handed you the menu. Let me put numbers on this so you can feel the weight of what is being taken from you. A 30-year-old who spends $600 a month on a car payment. Instead of investing, it is not losing $600 a month. At a conservative 8% annual return compounded to age 65, that $600 monthly outflow costs them approximately $1.2 million in foregone wealth. One car payment, one decision to drive something that impressed the neighbors, $1.2 million deleted from the retirement that is supposed to sustain the last 20 years of your life. Multiply that across the phone upgrades, the wardrobe cycles, the restaurant habits, the gift inflation, the vacation debt, and the number becomes $10 million over a working lifetime. $10 million that your family line will never see because it was converted into props that are now in a landfill, or a thrift store, or forgotten in a garage. The status tax is the most expensive subscription you will ever pay, and your family signed you up for it before you were born. They did not mean to. They were paying it themselves. They thought it was just what life cost, but now you know that every dollar spent on the performance of success is a dollar stolen from the actual thing. Section 6. The seed corn principle. There is a concept that old money families understand on a level so deep it borders on spiritual, and it is almost completely absent from the financial education of everyone else. Capital is seed corn. You do not eat your seed corn. You plant it. The harvest feeds you. The seed corn makes the harvest possible. If you eat the seed corn, you eat well for one winter. Then you starve forever. Poor and middle-class families eat their seed corn constantly. Every bonus becomes a vacation. Every tax refund becomes a new television. Every raise becomes a lifestyle upgrade. Every inheritance, when there is one, gets spent within 18 months on debts and upgrades and the things the deceased would have wanted them to have. The capital arrives, and instead of being planted, it is consumed. The Rockefeller family understood this principle perhaps better than any American dynasty. John D. Rockefeller established trusts and structures specifically designed to prevent his descendants from eating the seed corn. The principle was untouchable. Only the earnings could be distributed. The family could live well, but they could never destroy the engine. Generation after generation, the engine kept running. The assets grew. The distributions grew. The family remained wealthy, not because they kept earning more, but because they refused to consume the one thing that made all future earnings possible. The lifestyle feels like success because it is visible. The neighbors see the new kitchen. The relatives see the new car. Nobody sees the empty investment account because the investment account is invisible. And that is the trap. The visible rewards get prioritized because they relieve the shame engine. The invisible foundation gets neglected because nobody claps for a retirement account balance. Nobody posts photos of their index fund. Nobody feels like they have arrived when they wire money into a brokerage account. The reward for asset building is delayed. The reward for consumption is immediate, and the family inheritance of shame-based financial decision-making makes the immediate reward almost impossible to resist. This is why you see the same pattern repeat across thousands of families. A grandparent builds something, a small business, a piece of property, a modest portfolio built through decades of discipline. They die. The children liquidate it, not because they are evil or greedy, but because they were never taught what the asset was for. They saw it as their turn to have something, their turn to enjoy the reward their parents never let themselves enjoy. And within 18 months, the thing that took 40 years to build is gone. The seed corn has been eaten. The field is empty. The next generation starts from zero again. Every dollar you spend on something that depreciates is seed corn you have eaten. Every dollar you put into an appreciating asset is seed corn you have planted. The difference between a dynasty and a broke family 3 generations later is not how much money they made. It is how much seed corn they protected. Section 7. The family gravity field. There is a force that acts on anyone who tries to escape the financial programming of their family, and it is one of the most powerful and least discussed obstacles to building wealth. The moment you start saving aggressively, the moment you stop upgrading your car, the moment you decline the expensive family gathering or give a modest gift or say no to the loan request, the family responds. And the response is almost never congratulations on your discipline. The response is what happened to you. You have changed. You think you are better than us now. You are so cheap. You used to be generous. You used to be fun. Do you not love your family anymore? This is not cruelty. This is physics. Every family system has a gravitational center, a set point of financial behavior that the system enforces unconsciously. When one member starts drifting away from that set point, the system pulls them back. If the family norm is spending everything, saving feels like betrayal. If the family norm is performing wealth, quiet accumulation feels like hiding something. If the family norm is pooling resources to maintain appearances, refusing to participate feels like abandonment. And the pull is emotional, which makes it almost impossible to resist with logic. You can do the math, but when your mother looks at you with disappointment because you bought a used car, the math does not help. When your sibling calls you selfish for not contributing to the group gift, the spreadsheet does not protect you from the guilt. When your cousin needs bail money for the 3rd time, and the whole family expects you to contribute because you are the one with the good job, the compound interest chart does not make saying, "no hurt," any less. This is the hardest part of breaking the inheritance. It feels like cruelty even when it is clarity. It feels like selfishness, even when it is stewardship. The family taught you that love is measured in dollars spent. So when you stop spending, it feels like you are withdrawing love. You are not. You are withdrawing permission to be drained. But it will feel like the same thing for a long time. Old money families have a completely different gravitational center. In those families, the person who spends conspicuously is the one who gets pulled back. The disapproval flows toward the spender, not the saver. The family culture rewards restraint. The family culture treats quiet wealth as the norm and loud spending as the aberration. If you want to escape your family's gravity field, you have to accept something uncomfortable. The people who pull you back are not doing it because they want to harm you. They are doing it because your discipline makes their own choices harder to justify. When you save, you become a mirror, and they do not like what the mirror shows, so they try to fog the mirror. They try to make you the problem. Do not let them. The most rebellious thing you can do in a family culture that worships the appearance of wealth is to become invisible, to stop performing, to let them wonder why you drive that car and wear those clothes and never seem to have money for the things they think are important. Let them misunderstand. The misunderstanding is a tax you pay to escape. It is cheaper than the tax you are paying to stay. Section 8. The real rebellion. If you take nothing else from this, take this. The real rebellion against the programming you inherited is not to earn more. It is not to hustle harder. It is not to find a better job, or start a side business, or chase a promotion. The real rebellion is to become impossible to impress, impossible to shame, and impossible to drain. When your family culture taught you to chase the approval of strangers, the rebellion is to stop wanting their approval so badly that you pay for it monthly. When your family culture taught you that money is for spending, the rebellion is to build an asset column that nobody can see because you do not tell anyone it exists. When your family culture taught you that income is permission to consume, The rebellion is to let raises and bonuses and windfalls pass straight through to investments without ever touching your lifestyle. The people who built the great fortunes did not build them by being the loudest person in the room. They built them by being the quietest. The Rothschilds operated in multiple countries through a network of family members who communicated in code. The Rockefellers structured their wealth through layers of trusts and entities specifically designed to be boring and hard to see. The wealthiest family on your street is almost certainly not the one with the nicest cars in the driveway. It is the one with the oldest cars, the one where the house has not been remodeled in 15 years, the one where the parents wear clothes that are clean and simple and unbranded, the one where nobody seems to be trying to impress anyone. That family is not struggling. That family is winning. They just stopped telling anyone the score. Your family taught you that visibility equals success. The old money families have been teaching their children for centuries that visibility is a liability. Visibility invites taxation, litigation, social expectation, family obligation, requests for loans, requests for investment, requests for generosity that you are expected to provide because everyone can see that you have it. The invisible family pays none of these costs. The invisible family compounds in peace. The invisible family has the freedom to build without the friction of everyone else's expectations. Becoming invisible is the most powerful financial move most people will ever make. It costs nothing to implement, and it saves everything. Stop posting. Stop upgrading. Stop announcing. Stop proving. Let the world think you are doing fine but not great. Let your relatives assume you are comfortable but not wealthy. Let the shame engine run out of fuel because you stopped feeding it the one thing it needs to survive. An audience, here is your practical roadmap, broken down into what you can do today, what you can do in the next 3 months, and what you can build over the next several years. Immediate. Today, open a separate savings account at a different bank than your main checking account. Name it something boring. Seed capital account. Do not get a debit card for it. Make it slightly inconvenient to access. Set up an automatic transfer of $100 a month into it. The amount does not matter yet. The infrastructure matters. Then sit down and calculate what you spent last month on status. Not on necessities. On status, the restaurant meals where you picked up the check. The clothes that had logos. The subscriptions you do not use. The car payment for a car that was more than you needed. Write down the number. Do not judge it. Just know it. The first step to stopping the tax is seeing the tax. Then, have a conversation with yourself about what you are actually afraid of. What would happen if you drove a 10-year-old car? What would happen if you wore the same coat for 3 winters? What would happen if you said no to the expensive family gift exchange? Write down the worst thing you can imagine happening. Usually the worst thing is that someone will think you are struggling. Sit with that fear. Notice that it is a fear of a thought inside someone else's head. A thought that lasts seconds and then gets replaced by whatever they are worried about in their own life. The prison is made of air. You can walk through the walls whenever you decide to. Next 3 months, meet with an estate planning attorney. Even if your net worth is modest, a basic will and a conversation about trust structures costs a fraction of what it costs to fix things later. When there is complexity and urgency, open an investment account specifically for your children if you have them, or for your future children if you plan to. Put a small amount in it. Start teaching them, or start preparing to teach them, about assets and ownership instead of grades and degrees. Identify one person in your life who thinks in decades, not months. A mentor, an advisor, a family friend who has built something lasting. Ask them to lunch. Ask them one question. What is the best financial decision you made that nobody noticed? Listen. Do not talk. Take notes. Then, go home and implement whatever they told you. Long-term, multi-year. Begin converting your status spending into asset purchases, one category at a time. This year, the wardrobe budget goes to the investment account. Next year, the restaurant budget gets cut in half, and the difference goes to the asset column. Make it gradual so the gravitational pull of your old habits does not snap you back. Build an emergency fund large enough to cover 6 months of basic expenses before you do anything else with non-retirement money. You cannot make long-term decisions when you are afraid of short-term catastrophe. The emergency fund is not an investment. It is insurance against bad decisions. It is the thing that lets you say no to a bad job, a bad loan, a bad family obligation. Because you have months of runway instead of days. Have the hard conversation with your family, not the lecture, not the "you are all wrong and I am right" speech. That activates the gravity field. Instead, frame it as a personal journey. I am trying something different with how I handle money, and I might need your support. Set boundaries with love. I am not doing the expensive gift exchange this year. It is not because I do not love you. It is because I am trying to build something, and I need to be disciplined about it. The people who love you will adjust. The people who only loved your spending were never going to be there when you actually needed them anyway. And finally, every year, on your birthday, sit down and answer one question. If I died tomorrow, what would my children or my heirs inherit besides my stuff? Not what would they get. What would they know? What mental models would they have received from watching me? What conversations about money would they remember? What habits would I have modeled? What infrastructure would I have built for them? If the answer is nothing, you have 12 months to change it. The dynasty does not start with a fortune. It starts with a decision by one person in one generation to stop performing and start building. That person can be you. Not because the math is easy. It is not. Not because the family will support you. They may not. Not because the system will reward you immediately. It will reward you silently, invisibly, over decades that feel like nothing is happening. Until suddenly everything has happened. The old money families did not start with money. Many of them started with a single individual who looked at the way everyone around them was living and decided that the visible rewards were not worth the invisible cost. That person chose assets over applause. That person chose boring over impressive. That person chose to be the one in their family line who stopped being a customer of the system and became an owner instead. You are holding the same choice right now. Your family's programming is not destiny. It is just the first draft of the operating system. You can rewrite it. You can be the person your grandchildren talk about, the one who changed the trajectory, the one who looked at 100 years of financial habits and said, "Not on my watch," the one who planted seed corn they would never eat, so that people who shared their name could eat forever. That is what is available to you. Not a lottery ticket, not a shortcut, a decision, repeated every day, in small invisible ways, until one day you look up and realize you are no longer the person you were raised to be. You are the person who started something that outlives you. And that is the only kind of rich that actually counts. Not the kind that posts, not the kind that proves, not the kind that your family will recognize because it wears the same uniform of success they have been chasing for 3 generations. The invisible kind, the quiet kind, the kind that outlives the person who built it and feeds the people who carry the name forward. That is the inheritance your family never gave you because they never received it themselves. But you can give it. You can be the break in the pattern. You can be the ancestor your descendants study, the one who stopped performing and started building, the one who made a different choice,